Hello and welcome to another episode of Mind to Mind. My name is Evelyn Jerry. I am a mental health practitioner and I'm joined by my friend Dr. Daniel Claiborne, who is a psychologist. And maybe he would like to say hi.
Hi. Yes, we're excited to be back. I think we're in our second year of these programs. I think this might be our 22nd program.
23rd.
23rd. Okay. We've really enjoyed all the topics, and we always invite you to respond and let us know what you like and what you're interested in. And if you have ideas for further topics that are related to mental health, we're very open to that. Today, we're going to talk about different communication styles. And we're going to talk about them as though they're different between men and women. But really, we want to stay at the very beginning that this not necessarily always consistent, the way men communicate and the way women communicate. It's affected by our families, how we learn to communicate in our families. It's affected by culture and cultural differences. And so our main point really today is a little bit more than just men and women. It's really listening to the other person. If you're in a relationship with someone, you really try to listen to the way they communicate and what their needs are. In other words, what they need to hear from you to represent, caring and love and things like that. It can be very different from the way each of us thinks. And so if we go into relationships and really listen to the other person, we can learn their style and their needs. So we don't want it to be just as though all men are one way and all women are the other way. It's not quite like that. But there are some differences that have been studied. And I'd say 20 or 25 years ago, a book was very popular called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus. And for a period of time, that book sold more copies than any other book around the world other than the Bible. It was extremely popular for a period of time. And the author, John Gray, wrote a number of other books about that same kind of concept. And they were, very well received, very interesting, and they stirred up a lot of discussion among people about hearing the other person's language, the other person's style of communicating love and caring. And so I just thought it was a good contribution. I think those books are still available if you want to read them. So that's what we thought we would get into today, different styles and our different needs that are behind the styles of communicating.
Yeah, so if you have any questions about this topic, you feel free to share or comment down below. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter as well. So if you have any questions, you can ask, and we will be sure to answer you.
Yeah, that's really good. Actually, Evelyn, we were just talking before we started the program about the topic, and Evelyn had a couple of good observations that I thought maybe you want to repeat.
Okay, yeah, I think one of the things that I have observed when it comes to communicating styles between couples, especially like men and women. So you'll find that sometimes we are so focused on like communicating what we need and what we want that you're not hearing your partner. Like, and most of those barriers are caused by maybe you are blinded by your biases. For example, like as a woman, maybe I'm focusing so much on being understood or getting something done, and my partner is maybe like is communicating about maybe not having enough time to do the thing that I want or something like that. So we both have a valid point, but we are so focused on our biases or whatever it is that we need that you find that you're not hearing the other person out. So I think one of the barriers of communication is listening. You have to learn to listen to the other person. And it's important to also understand their style of communicating, like what exactly are they saying, and how do you get to them in a way that they actually hear you? How do you get out of your way to be able to understand the other person? How do they get out of their way to also understand you? Those are some of the things that we want to discuss today.
I think that's very normal and natural that we do our best initially in communication to say things and communicate the way we would like to hear it and the way we are accustomed to communicating. But that may
Yeah,
not be the way the other person interprets or receives our communication. And like I said earlier, that could be influenced by our gender. It could be influenced by our family, the way people in our family communicated, our role models that we've come in contact with. Um, it could be influenced by culture, by age, even.
yeah,
Each generation has some unique ways of uh, communicating and seeing the world and different ways of understanding things. So it could be
yeah,
age related. We're going to talk today as though it's men and women styles, but it really is much more complex than that.
excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah,
One of the things I had to learn as a therapist at first was to not assume that I understood what each of my clients was telling me. I would hear their language, their words, but I would assume they meant the same thing by their words that I would mean. Like, let's say, angry or depressed or words like that.
mhm,
But after a while, I came to realize that they use those same words that I might use, but they may mean something very different by it. And
yeah,
so I learned the value of listening and trying to kind of understand where that other person is coming from. So that's really our topic today, is kind of understanding where another individual is coming from.
yeah. Yeah, and sometimes like you really have to ask, like don't assume you understand what they're saying. You have to ask like, what do you mean by saying this? You really have to ask, especially like if something they said was triggering to you or made you upset, before assuming that they actually meant to hurt you. One of the things that I've learned is that it's important to actually ask, like, what do
Uh,
you mean by this? Like, when you say this, what do you mean? Because sometimes people don't really mean what you think they mean,
yes.
and by making an assumption, you might actually react to it badly. And by asking, you will clarify whatever it is that they are saying, so that like if they actually meant to hurt you, it's clear, and if they did not, then it saves you a fight.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that's really good. You can ask for an example, like, can you give me an example of what you're talking about? But Evelyn's really right that we can ask questions like that. And usually the other person appreciates being asked. They don't, it's not offensive. They usually are, it's a matter of respect. They feel respected as a unique individual, and we're going to the trouble of asking them. So I think it's generally a good thing. Did
yeah.
you, Evelyn, did you have a chance to post our outline?
Yes, I did. I have shared the outline. So if you are watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, you can go to the description or the caption and you will see the outline I have shared with you guys.
Okay, good. So
Yeah.
we're going to follow that more or less. But after the program, if you have any further questions or want to get more information, let Evelyn know. One of the first things on our outline was talking about the different needs that men and women have, or really just different needs all of us have. But in the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus work, um, John Gray described women's needs as needing to feel understood, um, needing to feel heard, which is similar, and needing to feel respected. And in contrast to that, there's another set of needs that he attributes more to men, and they would be for men feeling accepted, feeling approved of, uh, and appreciated, and feeling trusted.
Yeah.
So those are a little different. So all of us need all of those things, but it's really a matter of priorities. So if a man and a woman are talking and the woman is really feeling the most important thing for her is to feel that her partner understands her. And the man, meanwhile, is the more important thing to him is to feel trusted and accepted. And so sometimes those are at cross purposes and not they don't end in the same place. Um, an example of with men is that they really value being praised for what they do and being kind of rewarded even for the simplest things. Let's say a man washes the dishes or takes out the trash or does something very simple that women would just do without expecting any kind of praise. But men like to be acknowledged, like, oh, thank you. I see you took out the trash. Thanks a lot. And us men, we really feel like it's like we have a job to do and we like to be rewarded for doing a good job.
Yeah.
And so for some women, they have to get used to that their male partner likes to be thanked and appreciated for every little thing. And meanwhile, the man, though, really needs to be aware that when his woman partner communicates with him, she's not asking for suggestions. She's really just wanting to be understood. And that is something that gets in the way of men and women sometimes, where a woman will talk about a problem and the man interrupts quickly with a solution or a suggestion. And for most women, that's not that helpful. If two women are talking to each other, they do a lot of listening and nodding and support and understanding. If
Yeah.
two men are talking to each other, as soon as one of them thinks they have a solution to the problem, they interrupt and give the solution. And for the other man, that's perfectly fine. That's so there are these different styles uh, can lead to a lot of frustration unless people kind of realize where the other person is coming from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh my God, it brings a lot of memories, especially when it comes to the interruption. Like you'll find a man will want to, oh, you have a problem, let me solve it for you. But I just want to vent, like just sit there and listen to me and let me bring out all my frustrations. I don't want you to solve, I don't want you to solve anything for me. Maybe by the time I'm telling you, the issue is solved, you know?
Mhm.
But I just want to vent and I just want to talk about it, or I just want to vent and air my feelings out. Then when I'm feeling better, then you can help me solve the problem, and I
Uh-huh.
have to ask for help. Like as a woman, most of the time, like we need to ask for help. Like so, if a woman hasn't asked you for help, then I think just sit there and listen. I know it doesn't make sense to you, and for you, sometimes for most men, it's a waste of time, and he'll be like, "Wow, why? I don't want to go through this." But one of the things that I've come to learn is that, like, if you know your man is not going to listen to you, like you're not going to get what you want from him, especially if you want to vent and you won't get it from him, you won't get the venting chance from him, then have girlfriends. Call your girlfriend will listen to you. Like call your friends and
Uh,
they listen to you. But if you know your man is the solving, I'm gonna save the day kind of guy, then I
I
especially
think
if it's
that's
going to piss you off, like then it's not worth it.
right. And that, without realizing it, could cause distance between the two people. If one person
Yeah,
thinks their needs are not going to be met, then they'll go other places and not
yeah,
communicate as much with the partner. In the United States, there was a study that showed that men interrupt women 5 times as often as women interrupt men. So it really did point out that, and the men are not trying to not listen, they're trying to help or solve a
yeah,
problem, but that may not at all be what their partner is wanting or needing. This is one of the most frequent topics that I come across in counseling with couples,
yeah,
where there's misunderstanding or they're on their agendas are different and they're clashing and they don't understand why, because each person is trying. The woman is trying to communicate what she's feeling or thinking, and the man
mhm,
is trying to help solve the problems or give suggestions. So they both think they're putting effort into this, but it's
yeah,
not working somehow. And so that's
yeah,
one of the most common things we talk about when I'm working with couples, married couples.
yeah. And I think that's why it's very important to have like a rich social life, because sometimes we I feel like there are certain things that you would like to discuss with a specific person, because you know they are the best person to listen to you. Like for example, you can have a friend who will listen to a certain, like if it's an emotional problem, you go to them. You have a friend who listens to your financial problems, and there's that friend who you go to for solutions, like you know that they will give you solutions and that's what you need at that moment. If you want an emotional someone who will just listen to your emotional needs and they will not interrupt you and all that, then that's the person you go to. But sometimes you find like we put too much pressure on our romantic partners to give us all these things, and for them to satisfy all these needs, and sometimes they are not capable of doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the reason why you're with that person is not just for them to make you happy. Happiness comes within, from within. But there's a certain amount of pressure you can give someone because they don't like fulfill all your communication needs. And it's very important to identify what their weaknesses and strengths are in terms of communicating, and especially like in terms of um if it's an emotional, especially for women. This is mostly for women. Like you find like us women, we get emotional about almost everything. It could be a work problem, it could be a i went grocery I went to shop for groceries, and the cashier was rude at me or something, so I just want to vent. So you have an emotional problem, and most of the time your partner will not understand it, because he might end up asking you like, so did you buy what you wanted? Yes. So for them, they don't understand what is the what is the problem. What is the problem there? So not unless maybe when you have calmed down and you can come and talk to your partner and tell them like, in this particular situation, all I needed from you was you to hear me out. I didn't want you to try and solve the issue. I didn't want you, I just needed some empathy. Yeah, but sometimes they won't understand it like at first. You'll have to be very patient sometimes.
I think this is one of your best points, Evelyn, that no one person will meet all of our psychological needs. And
Yeah,
so we really, even in a good marriage, let's say, a good partnership, each person still needs other friends and
yeah,
family members, and because each person can hear us in a different way and give us support in a different way. And
yeah.
usually any one person can't do everything. And so I
Mhm.
think that's a very, very good point.
Yeah.
Um,
One of the other things I've actually noticed is also the timing of what you're trying to communicate. Because you could be going through something really terrible, and you need your partner at that particular point, but they are also going through something terrible. So you both need each other, but none of you has the capacity to give each other what you need. So it's also learning to identify that every single person has a limit. I don't know whether to call it a limit or what. So you need to also understand the space that your partner is in to be able to communicate whatever it is that you need. Because sometimes you might go to your partner and maybe you have maybe a family problem, maybe someone you love is ill, then they got fired from their job. So you both have like really important things that you need to communicate. But by the time you're coming to talk to each other, you're you're at 1% and your partner is also at 1%. So you need each other's to fulfill each other's needs. By that particular time, none of you is capable of doing that. So it's very important to first of all like survey the field and understand at what point or how is your partner feeling at that moment, because you will find a lot of misunderstanding come from that space where you want to come and say something important to you, and then they also dump whatever they are feeling to you, and none of you give each other what you need, and you both leave there feeling emptier than you came, and you feel like none of you care for each other. And at that point doesn't really mean that, it means that none of you had the capacity to hear each other out.
Uh-huh. A difference in styles that's related to this is women, it seems, more have they need to kind of talk out a problem in order to understand it. And they don't necessarily need to be interrupted or get solutions, but they're actually working through the problem by talking about it. And a lot of
Mhm.
times with men, they would prefer to figure out the solution to the problem in their own mind and
Yeah,
then express what they're going to do about it. So
yeah,
when a man and a woman are talking and the woman is talking, the man may be thinking she wants a solution as soon as we can get to one. And the woman
yeah,
is thinking, I just want to hear this and hear myself talk and figure out for myself what's going on and what I'm feeling and what I might want to do. And so there is another reason that with good intentions, each person is operating at somewhat cross purposes with the other person.
yeah. And that happens a lot because maybe the woman will come and talk to the man, but the man is so much in his head trying to solve his own problem. And when you add this other problem, adds into his head, and end up not communicating or saying anything for a while. So the woman will feel like the man is not present because they're
Mhm.
not paying attention. But the man is not aware that he's actually not like present as well. So for him, he feels like he's doing the best he can, and the woman feels unheard. So none of them leave. Maybe an argument will spur from there, like, oh, you're not hearing me, you're not understanding me, I'm talking to you and you're ignoring me. And the man is like, I have a lot on my mind, da da da. Then it turns into a whole thing.
Right.
Just because,
One of the things I often work with men in my
yeah,
couples counseling is reminding them that one of the things they can do to really get the approval of their female partner is to respect that person's wishes. So if the female partner has certain preferences, the way things should be done around the house or whatever those preferences might be, the man will actually score points and gain respect by following those wishes and not overriding them and thinking, well, I know better what should be done, but to respect. And this is even on small things, respect the wishes of the other person. One of the
yeah,
things in the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus books that is very important is how each gender tends to keep score about how they're doing in the relationship. John Gray says in his books that women give every good thing her male partner does a single point. So if the man brings her flowers, that gets 1 point. If the man gives her a diamond ring, that gets 1 point. If the man washes the car, that gets 1 point. Whereas men generally think the bigger the effort is, the more points that it gets. So a man would think, if I bring my wife flowers and then I also bring her a diamond ring, I get many, many more points with the diamond ring. And so the man generally feels like if he's done a few big things, then that's enough to coast on for quite a while.
Oh
Whereas
my God.
the female partner is thinking each one of those efforts, big or little, is 1 point, and the man keeps needing to score more points. So it's little things like that. And this could not always be just between men and women, but sometimes you find partners really keep score differently. Some people value big things very highly, and they can generate lots of points that can last for a long time. And other people know they need small, frequent efforts every day to feel respected and heard. So it's not just men and women, but this is, at least in the culture of the United States, where John Gray was writing, that was something that was more typical of men and women. So he calls it keeping score. How do you know if you're doing well in a relationship? So the man might think, I've done 2 or 3 big things, I'm in good shape. And the woman might be feeling, well, he hasn't done anything for me for days. Thinking of the smaller things. One
Yeah.
example John Gray uses is, if you're a man and you're going to buy flowers for your female partner, you might give her 1 flower every day for 12 days, and you'll score 12 points. But if you
Yeah.
give her a whole bouquet of 12 flowers at once, you get 1 point. It's
Yeah.
just
Oh my
gets us
God.
thinking. It gets us thinking about how people feel appreciated.
Yeah. That is so true. Oh my God. It's so funny. Like I've actually experienced that where you find that maybe like your partner will think that because they did one huge thing that will give him scores to last like 3 months. And I'm like, okay, you'll bring me flowers today, but tomorrow you didn't take out the trash. That will be a problem. But now for them, they'll feel like maybe you don't appreciate them or something. But it feels, but now it actually makes a huge point, because it just goes to show that we have different communication styles
Uh,
and expectations, where your partner is thinking because they did like this huge thing, it makes them get away with certain things in between. But for women, it's how you show up for me every day. Like, how did you show up for me today? How did you show up for me today? And how consistent are you about the way you're showing up to me? But most men will think that because I showed up in a huge way today, tomorrow I have a break,
uh,
which is not true.
hmm
And that's
Now,
why
there are
maybe,
lots of differences like that are, when you begin to think about them, they're very helpful. Um,
yeah.
Another one is the meaning of sex in a relationship. For
Mhm.
many men, sex is a way to get to intimacy. So making love results in having intimacy. With many women, making love comes after intimacy and trust have been established by other things all day
Yeah.
long. So uh, those are somewhat at cross purposes. And a lot of married couples will solve that problem by taking turns. So sometimes they may make love just spontaneously, no matter how well the day has been going, just because the man is in the mood for that. But other days, The man waits and makes sure the relationship is going well. The woman is feeling understood and trusted and supported. And when she's ready, then they make love after she has already felt supported. So a lot of times, and this is true of many things in couples, that couples are always different in certain things. And most successful couples I have found solve that problem of differences by just, they don't try to meet in the middle. They more just take turns. Like one person wants to have fancy meals and the other person likes to have very plain meals. And so they take turns. Or one person likes to go on a vacation where it's very adventurous and there's a lot of stimulation and learning, and the other person wants to go on a vacation where they lie on the beach and just relax and have quiet time. And so lots of couples will solve that difference by trading and taking turns. Couples, if you compromise on these issues and you meet in the middle, that's not usually the best solution, because that means neither person is getting what they really need.
Yeah.
Sometimes compromise is the only thing to do, but a lot of times taking turns works better.
Yeah. I think that's really important, especially because none of us is the same.
Mhm.
And I think we've established this even in our past topics, where we've said that it doesn't matter like whether you're a woman or a man, like all of us come from different backgrounds, cultures, grown up with different families. So we have different needs, and it's very important to really understand like what your partner needs and what their love language is, what it is that they want. Because if you are showing up for them and loving them the way you want to be loved, doesn't necessarily mean, you may feel like you're being unappreciated, but it doesn't mean that they actually feel loved. So you have to show up for them the way they want to be loved.
Uh-huh.
And means
Yeah.
that you have to really understand who they are. You have to understand how they want to be communicated to. Even when there is a problem, like how do you communicate to them in a way that they understand without them feeling like they are being attacked,
Mhm.
and
Right.
in a way that is going to solve the issue instead of causing a fight? Because sometimes couples fight, and when you ask them, okay, why are you fighting, they will tell you that I don't even know, like it was just a small issue and then it has turned into this huge problem. But it's not because that it was a huge problem. It's usually because y- none of you knew how to communicate to the other in a way that you understand, in a way that at the end of the day you feel appreciated and respected by your partner. So
Right.
it's really important to understand what are the things you can do to trigger your partner.
Hmm.
And it may seem like it's not important to you, but it actually is important to them. Like for example, I was just telling Dr. Claiborne about how Kenya, we have different cultures. We have like over 42 tribes here in Kenya. So sometimes you'll find something is like, I'm Kikuyu. So you'll find like maybe like in my language, first of all, as a child growing up, I am not like as a child growing up, first of all, you're not supposed to speak when adults are speaking. And especially even if you have like a valid point, you're not supposed to speak when adults are speaking. Sometimes even women don't have like a seat on the table, especially when men are talking. Like you'll find like maybe my mom will be quiet somewhere in the corner. Maybe she has a better point to solve the issue, but as in it kind of deemed like lack of respect. I never understood it growing up, but I actually realized it's true. And you might actually end up being told something horrible by speaking when you're not asked to speak. And so even how you communicate what you're saying can be deemed disrespectful. So there are ways we speak, like there's certain languages, and there's a certain way you will deliver your words that is deemed respectful. Then you will meet a certain tribe where there are no filters. Someone just say whatever is in their mind, and you'll find that when you're dealing with this person, whatever comes to their mind, they'll just say it and it's not a big deal. But to you, it will sound disrespectful because you grew up knowing it is disrespectful, not necessarily because they meant to disrespect you. So this
I
is
think
some of
this
the
is
things that
something I really agree with what you're saying, Evelyn. And this is something that when couples are first getting together, you can ask about all those issues. What did your family do? And how did you, in your family, were there any unwritten rules about what men and women or parents and children should do and not do? And the best time to find those things out is when the relationship is first beginning, because you neither one have a big stake in things. And it's very likely there would be some differences.
Mhm.
Another difference that's not directly related to communication, but is a difference in the way men and women are kind of psychologically in many cases, and that is the way people solve problems. For men, we call them kind of linear thinkers. So if I have 8 things that I need to do, in my mind, I will line them up and I will start with number 1. And I will work on number 1 until that's solved, and then I'll go to number 2 and then number
Mhm.
3. So if a problem occurs in this manner with a man, it usually involves frustration. I get blocked or stymied on problem number 3, so I can't go on to number 4. So I get frustrated and angry. Women tend to be more circular in their thinking about their priorities. So a woman's mind might go, she has 8 things that are important, but they're not linear and lined up one behind the other. They're circling around and they're all equally present. So if a woman finds that it's too much or the problems aren't getting solved, her feeling is more likely to be a feeling of being overwhelmed. Whereas the
Mhm.
man was frustrated because he got blocked, the woman is overwhelmed because she can't solve everything at once. And it's
Yeah.
more of a feeling of being overwhelmed. So sometimes couples need to keep that in mind. And this is not just true of men and women, but we're listening to another person and they're expressing being overwhelmed or blocked or frustrated, or to kind of realize they may be experiencing it in a way that's different from what you might. But
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing that when I started reading about the different psychological styles of men and women, that I thought was really important, because I can see that in myself and other women partners I've had or friends I've had. Um,
Mhm.
that what stresses us is not the same thing necessarily in each
Yeah.
case. Does that make any
Yeah.
sense to you, Evelyn?
Yeah, it does a lot. And I've had like different like male friends saying that um like they put their problems in boxes. Like there's box A, box B, all the way to Z. And then so they will solve each box depending on how urgent and how important it is to them. So you may bring a problem in the middle of them solving their boxes, and when they analyze, your box is at G and they're at D at that moment.
Yeah.
So they'll tell you, hold on, I'll get back to you, or I'll come to you. So you might get to them, you even give them a day or two, and by the time you're getting back, you think that now they're ready for you, but they got stuck at, let's say, E, and they're not ready for G.
Mhm.
So, and there is nothing you can do about it. So you start feeling ignored. You start feeling like there's nothing, like they don't take whatever it is that is important to you important, and they don't find it urgent, you know. And I think this is where now the compromise comes in, where you need to learn to prioritize other people, and also realize that not every, as much as it may not be important to you, it's important to them. And by the time you decide to get to G, they may have solved their own problem, and you might have a bigger problem in your hand by the time you're willing to help. So yeah, it's just a matter of
Yeah,
figuring out.
in these conversations, that the man may have more of a need to get unstuck from
Yeah,
the thing that's frustrating him, and the woman
yeah,
may have more of a need to be heard and kind of prioritize all these things that are circling around her, and that
yeah,
help she needs, not so
yeah,
much a specific suggestion. Now,
yeah.
earlier,
Sometimes,
oh, go ahead.
uh, and sometimes like men will also express the frustration of how like a woman will jump from one topic to the other to the other to the other, like actually giving a point of what you were talking, like for us, for men it's like boxes, for us it's like intertwined wires. So 1 minute I'm talking about A, the next minute I'm at Z, then I'm at D, then I'm at F. So like, and like sometimes you'll find like a woman's statement, just one statement will be intertwined with 8 issues all at once. And men get confused by this. So they'll be like, hold up, hold up, hold up. I got lost. What were you talking about? What are you talking about? And sometimes you'll feel like us women, like before I understood that, I used to think that maybe you were not paying attention to me. Why are you not why are you not listening to what I'm saying? But I came to understand they don't understand the way we talk.
Mhm.
So I need to take one topic, exhaust it in how I'm conversing, and I have to warn them that I am changing the topic to something else.
Mhm.
Now I want to talk about something else. Like you have to communicate that I'm
Mhm.
done talking about this. Now I want to jump to something else. Because when you start talking about one thing, their brains start solving whatever it is that you're talking about. So if you jump from one topic to the other, they will not understand anything that you you are talking about.
I think you can see this not just in how people communicate, but if you watch like men and women in their home, um,
Mm-hmm.
men will pick something and start working on it and spend a lot of time on that one thing. Meanwhile, other
Yes.
things they let them go, but they want to get the one thing finished. Whereas women do lots of multitasking, where they'll
Yeah.
do one thing, but on the way to do that thing, they do two or three other things, and both are good. Both are good styles. They have their own place and they're important, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
Earlier, Evelyn, you mentioned love languages, and I thought we should talk a little bit about that and what we
Sure.
mean by that. And there are books on this, but there are different things that people can do in a relationship that communicate that they are caring and loving toward the other person. But but the other person may not value those things in the same way as the person who's giving them. For example, on our outline, we have certain things that could communicate love: gifts, helping someone, expressing your feelings, um,
Mhm.
touch, physical touch, remembering things that are important to the other person. So there are
Yeah.
quite a few things that are meant to communicate love, and
Mhm.
but they're only received that way if the other person has that same or similar love language. So if I bring a gift to my partner when what she really needs is to hear me express my feelings, then I'm thinking I'm doing something really good for her by giving this gift, but she's missing what she really needed was for me to tell her how I feel in words. So you see that they can be cross purposes. And another
Yeah.
thing that we ought to think about with this with love languages is that as we keep growing in life, we change our love languages. Whereas maybe when I was in my teens, if somebody gave me a gift, that was really important. But then in my 30s, having them express their feelings in words became more important. So
Mm.
we do evolve through our love languages. And so in couples or even friendships, people need to keep up with where the other person's love languages are currently. It's not always been the way it's been when they were young. So we call this renegotiating the contract. So
Yeah.
in any relationship, there's sort of an unwritten contract between two people, what they're each supposed to do to please the other person. And
Mhm.
but those contracts can change. So over the course of a long relationship, for example, every few years that those people might want to have a talk about what are their love languages now? What do they need
Yeah.
now? How would they prioritize things? And that could keep evolving. Sometimes these
Yeah.
things happen because there's a fight that occurs, an argument, and that causes the couple to renegotiate and kind of understand where we are now.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can do it without an argument or fighting, but lots of times we just drift along the same way we've always been doing things until it doesn't work. And
Yeah.
then we have to have a talk about what's happened. Why is it not working? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, your love languages aren't static. I mean, they can evolve.
Yeah. Actually, one of the other things that I noticed about love languages is that I think we all kind of have all of them, but they are at different percentages for
Yeah,
each. So you'll find that maybe like spending time with someone and having quality time with someone is maybe more important to you than physical touch, but you still need physical touch, but at a certain percentage. And also when it requires to help or helping someone, maybe if your spouse or your partner requires more help from you than quality time, they differ like that. So but not necessarily meaning that like you don't like there's any one person who doesn't have all of them. We do, but at different levels. So it's just a matter of understanding. Maybe
the
your
one,
partner loves gifts, but at that particular time, like what Dr. Claiborne was saying, at that particular time, what they really need is your time.
yeah, the one thing I do to somewhat amend what Evelyn has just stated is there are some cases where a certain love language of a certain person really doesn't have it. I mean, for example, there could be some people where giving a gift is not only not important, but actually offensive. So
Yeah,
I think generally what Evelyn is saying is correct, but sometimes because of a person's history or their background or their family, certain efforts to be supportive or loving are actually negative just because
mhm,
of their particular experience in life. And
yeah,
it's something that they've learned not to trust. I mean, I can
yeah,
imagine like a female partner and the male partner gives a present or a gift of some sort, and then she reacts by thinking, what is it he's trying to do? What does he want? You know, if she might feel manipulated. So
mhm,
whenever a person doesn't react well to something you've done in what you think is a loving way, you should, like Evelyn said earlier, ask about it. You don't
yeah,
seem to, this doesn't seem to please you like I thought it would. I thought it would please you, but it doesn't seem to. Could you tell me about this? And really
yeah,
listen and kind of respect where they're coming from.
yeah. It's so funny. Like I was discussing with one of my female friends the other day, and she was saying like, sometimes when she's having an issue with a partner and she communicates what the problem is, the partner either will walk away or is so uncomfortable with confrontation that most of the time like they'll run away from the conversation. But because they know they were wrong, they will go and buy them a gift and come with a gift to them. And this happens so many times that by the end of the day, like it doesn't solve the problem that they have. And so there will be a repetition of the problem. So sometimes
Yeah.
you may find that maybe you feel like maybe they don't appreciate you, but it's not that they don't appreciate you. It's not that they don't appreciate the things you're doing for them, but they feel it's like you're trying to buy your way into peace in your relationship for things that you can actually sit down and solve.
And
So
actually, in
maybe,
a situation like that, each person has to understand the other. The
yeah,
woman needs to understand by giving a gift, the man really does consider that loving. And
And
so there is a value in that in his mind. And then the man has to think, wait a minute, she doesn't react positively to giving gifts. They seem small, or they may seem manipulative, or but he needs to understand how that might seem to her. I guess
yeah,
Evelyn mentioned earlier, but I think this is maybe a good way to wrap up, is we just don't need, we can't make assumptions about
mm,
the other person's uh, way of dealing with problems, or their way of dealing with emotions, or what they mean by certain words, or what their
yeah,
love languages are. It's a process of learning,
mm,
understanding, and trying to get outside of ourselves to see where that other person is coming from.
yeah,
That's our general theme really today.
yeah. And one of the things that I've learned about relationships exposes a lot of your weaknesses, and we need to be self-aware enough to know that you can't know everything about yourself. Sometimes someone else will point out something about you. And yeah, it feels bad at first, but if you actually work on it, it makes you a better person. That's why we keep learning and growing and, improving ourselves to becoming better human beings. And that's why we need relationships. We need people in our lives. And by doing things, you create better relationships. You become a better communicator. You understand more people and different personalities, and it actually makes your life way easier. So
Yeah,
by understanding that people are different and they require different things and they have different needs and different styles of communicating, it will help you solve so many problems, not just your romantic relationships, but also your, like work relationships, your friendships, your family problems. Yeah. And that is what we wish for you.
yeah. And I think it's important along with that to remember that not to feel guilty or ashamed about not understanding the other person's culture or background or language or their needs or their style, or that's just normal. How could we
Yeah.
ever completely be prepared to understand someone who's different from ourselves? So the whole idea is learning, asking questions, and in a way having fun with it and enjoying it, growing, as Evelyn was saying, um, but not feeling bad about knowing these things to start with.
Mm,
How could we really? Each of us has our own individual history. So
yeah.
it's not every history, it's just our history. So when we
Yeah.
come into contact with another person, they have their individual style and needs too. And so anyway, not to feel bad about the, sometimes couples will come into my therapy and they'll say, well, at least we've never fought or never had a fight. And they think that's a good thing, but it's really not. It's a bad thing,
Yeah.
because only through conflict, and I don't mean horrible fighting, but just conflict, only through conflict can you really grow or understand something. And
Yeah.
so arguments and conflict and disagreements are really very natural in a very healthy relationship, not
Yeah.
just in romantic relationships, but friends. I mean, you may have a friend that you just love in every other way, but politics, you're different. And so
Yeah.
that becomes something you both know that you need to treat very carefully.
Mm. Yeah. And sometimes you will come to learn certain things about yourself, which is part of life and growing up. And no one really knows everything. So you have to extend grace to yourself. Sometimes you will experience something and you start feeling bad about it, but you don't understand what exactly has triggered you. And this is where now you have to really be patient with yourself and extend grace to yourself to understand and analyze the situation, because this is how you're also learning what you're okay with and what you're not okay with. And you will never know everything about yourself, so you need to also be patient with yourself, that you may think you're okay with certain things, but you will come to learn that you're not. And that is okay. And the point is, the moment you learn you're not okay with something, you're sat yourself, you're sat and communicate that to people who love you, and you tell them that you're not okay with certain things, and it's just a part of living each day of your life.
Mhm. Yeah, we're all moving targets. We're not static. Each one of us is a process in development. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the challenging things about working with another person, is that meanwhile I'm changing and the other person's changing. And so we're
Hmm.
trying to perceive each other accurately, but
Yeah.
we're also both changing. Anyway,
Yeah.
I've
This
really
made me
enjoyed
think about
this.
your canvas theory.
What did you say, Evelyn?
I'm saying, talking about this has made me think about your canvas theory, that each day you're painting a new version of yourself.
Oh, uh-huh. Yes, I think we mentioned that before. My idea that each of us is more like a movie or a book. We're a kind of a production, and we have a beginning, and then we'll eventually have an end. And at any point in time, we can't change anything that's come before us, but we can
Mhm.
work on something different today, and we're in
Yeah.
charge of whatever decisions we're going to make in the future. But yes, I've talked with Evelyn about this several times, that my idea that we're all like a play or a movie or a book or a work of art that's continually, each day we add to it, take away from it, modify it, and then when we die, it's finished. And, anyway, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Evelyn. You have really uh, good points that I appreciate. We're thinking that maybe one of our next meetings will come back to my friend, Dr. Bream, who will
Yeah.
present some uh, self therapy techniques that we can do on our own at
Mhm.
home. And he's excited about doing that. We just need to decide which of our upcoming meetings that will be. But
Yeah.
meanwhile, we would appreciate your feedback, what you like and don't like, and ideas for other topics.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Um, and if you have anything to add, anything to comment, don't hesitate to reach out to me on
Right.
all the social media or all the platforms that you're watching us from. And you can share to as many people as possible. Once this live is over, everything that we've ever done is online. So you can
Oh,
scroll through any of our previous topics, anything that you find interesting. Yeah, and once again, this has been amazing. Have a lovely evening.
thank you all for listening.
Mhm.
Take
Bye
care.
bye.
Bye.